Hello, welcome to another episode of Wild About Nature. My name's Matt. Today, we're back at the Truckee Meadows Parks Foundation Nature Study Area. We're here because the summer science camp is here doing some work. Today, we're going to be talking about something that all plants need. Plants that, if they don't have this, they don't survive and they don't reproduce. Do you think you know what it is? Well, stick around and we'll see what the whole buzz is about. So you figure what the whole buzz is about and what it is that plants need to be able to survive, expand, and reproduce? If you said pollination, you're right. Now, pollination is when pollen goes from one plant to another. And it can happen in a couple different ways. It can happen with insects and animals like birds and butterflies and bees, or it can happen by wind. Sometimes the pollen is right next to, is on the same plant, and it just moves over and just pollinates itself. That's called self-pollination. The other one is called cross-pollination, and that's when it involves something like insects, like butterflies, bees, birds. There's a couple different ways pollination can happen, and we're going to look at some of those, starting with a bee home or a bee box. This is a bee box. Does not inherently pollinate, but it holds pollinators. The people here at Truckee Meadows have built these because they're trying to increase the bee population. The bee population is declining, and that's not a good thing, because if there's no bees to pollinate our plants, like the food we eat, we don't have any food to eat. They need to be pollinated before they create what we eat, the seeds of what we eat. The bees will come here and they will make their nest here, and they'll make their babies, and their babies will hatch, and they'll come out and they'll do more pollination. Like I said, pollination is incredibly important for plants. And bees aren't the only ones that do it. A lot of other ones are flies, ants, butterflies, bats, birds, and some other insects. There's actually too many to name, because almost anything that's looking for nectar will come in, get that pollen attached to their body, and then they'll go to another flower where that pollen will fall off and it will pollinate that flower. Let's go check out what else we can find and see if we can find any other pollinators here. Here is a great example of a pollinator. This is a bee, and it's pollinating this flower. Now, some people may ask, Matt, are you afraid of getting stung? And the answer is no, because the bee is really not paying any attention to me. The bee is there just for the nectar, and as it is coming after the nectar, it's getting pollen on its legs and its body. Now, when that bee moves to another flower, that pollen, some of that pollen will fall off and will pollinate that flower. This is the pollinator garden here at Truckee Meadows Parks Foundation. As you can see, this has a whole lot of different plants in it. All these plants are to attract pollinating insects and animals. That is not only to pollinate them, to pollinate the plants, but to bring in more pollinators. For some places to have very little pollinators and they're running low, so they plant them here to try to bring in more native species like bees, butterflies, and hummingbirds. And as we talked about, we have different types of pollinators. Bees, we saw a little earlier. Hummingbirds, other creatures like that, are all attracted to different types of plants. For instance, there's a plant called the corpse plant. Now, this is a really large flower, and it smells like rotting flesh, so it attracts flies. Flies are its main pollinator. It doesn't mean it's only flies, but it's mainly flies. Now let's think about, why do only certain insects and animals go to certain flowers? Well, there's a couple reasons for this. One, scent. The scent is attracting different insects, different animals. So you're not going to have a sweet smelling flower attract a pollinator that likes sour smelling scents. Same thing, vice versa. The other one is color. Now most insects can see in the ultraviolet range. We can't. So they see different than we do. We may see red, green, yellow, blue, orange. They see a whole different set of colors. And those colors are attracting certain insects. Lastly, there's structure, plant structure. Now, heavier insects and animals aren't going to land on very flimsy plants. For instance, a bumblebee isn't going to land on a snapdragon. It's not strong enough. But a bumblebee will land on a dandelion. It has a strong enough structure, it can support that weight. So, what did we learn? We learned about pollinators. We learned about different flowers attract different pollinators. And we learned that pollination is crucial to a plant's survival and reproduction. So until next time, stay wild.